between these two trainers because there's quite a few options that both of them can take to start off this match. On Tyler's side of the field, though, let's get this game started. We're going to see Clefable and the Golden go out on the field from Cayden. And Tyler, similar idea, Clefable and the King Gambit.
Maybe the metagame we were expecting coming into the weekend a little bit. We got Clefable, a very powerful redirector, next to two of the format's strongest Steel-type Pokemon.
Exactly, and with two of the format's strongest Steel-type Pokemon, there is a lot of initial pressure down on both of these very supporting Pokemon. For Tyler's positioning, though, he doesn't have to worry necessarily about opting for a redirection here, as Make It Rain will just hit both targets regardless. So his Clefable could either Protect, Terrastalize. We saw that he locked into the Protect. And now we have a Follow Me on the opposing Clefairy, which would help redirect a Dark-type attack. However, we saw that Tyler opted for that Iron Head, and we'll have to just see how much damage this Make It Rain does with choice specs against the King Gambit. It's not worth it, as you can see. It's not very effective. Finally, that Iron Head, though, is going to be very effective against the opposing Clefable and will activate the Citrus Berry, so it can take one more hit from this Pokemon, but still, really put on the back foot right off the bat.
You mentioned the popularity of Swords Dance King Gambit. One thing to keep in mind is the King Gambit on Tyler's side of the field does have that Assault Vest, so just shrugging off that attack, maybe making it a little easier for Clefable potentially to take that attack. Also, with the Protected on Clefable, you still have to be concerned on Cayden's side of the field. Was that actually Clefable or was that Zoroark? You don't know yet.
That is true. We do have the benefit of Tyler's perspective in this matchup, but in case y'all at home are curious, the way that Zoroark works is that it will take on the illusion of the last Pokemon you pick in Team Preview. So in this instance, not as relevant, but in Game 2 or potentially even in Game 3, what is very definitely a Clefable could very much not be a Clefable. But there will be only one Clefable left on the field at the end of this turn, as Tauros, the Aqua Breed Tauros, will be intimidating this Defiant King Gambit.
And don't forget, it has that Mirror Herb, so this Tauros has done this on purpose.
It has, and that's such a different approach to intimidate users that we've seen recently. Obviously, Incineroar, sometimes we'll just go for that Intimidate on the opposing Defiant Pokemon because there isn't too much that they can do in retaliation, but this Tauros will be able to retaliate quite nicely with a close combat at that boosted attack stage. Another Make It Rain from this Golden Go will again do some decent chip damage to the opposing side of the field. We'll be dropping its special attack in the process, and without Clefable to redirect any attack, one Kowtow Cleave is all it takes to pick up that KO.
A great read there, knows that there's not going to be a Follow Me. Picked up a knockout and a critical Pokemon. Also gained some critical information, sort of for both sides. With both Clefable switching out there, we learned both which Clefable is faster and also does reveal that it must actually be Clefable because the speedy Zoroark would have left battle first and gotten its friend Talonflame intimidated.
Exactly. So now that we know there's no Zoroark in play for Cayden, he can kind of use that in his predictions a bit more. You have to wonder what that final Pokemon is, especially knowing that Talonflame was chosen. This Talonflame, too, is a bit unique with Skyplate, Gale Wings. That's already broken, but also has upper hand. So not that there's any priority moves on the field right now. Definitely not something that Cayden's probably practiced against.
And Tauros is not really well positioned where, it's able potentially to do a bunch of damage to either of these Pokemon. It's Clefable there to protect it. And, with King Gambit being the slowest attacker now on Tyler's side of the field, like a super clear path toward knocking out Tauros, who resists all of its moves.
And not only that, the King Gambit can't protect because it's holding the Assault Vest item. So Tyler's best defensive play at this point in time is most likely to Terrastalize. And while we'll take a moment to see this Talonflame switch out and for the Clefable to come back out onto the field for him, we will see the King Gambit Terrastalize into Grass typing, which is great defensively against the water-fighting Tauros.
Yeah, at least gets that, perhaps can use that to pick up a knockout on this Clefable. But yeah, still going to have to take a very powerful hit. No matter what's coming the other direction now, will most likely be a neutral attack on it. And hey, it's important to keep this King Gambit healthy too. You've also already started to take some damage, but at least do have the boosted attack from Defiant.
Clefable redirecting any attacks. Let's see how much this close combat's going to do to the King Gambit. That is enough to pick up the KO there, so the Terrastalization not even coming to play. Clefable will be back out on the field for Tyler, but with only 2 Pokemon remaining, you do have to wonder how he's going to find the damage to get through the Tauros, which has made great use of the stat boost from the Mirror Herb.
Yeah, I mean, kind of an optimistic terrestrialization there, perhaps hoping that there would be a wave crash instead of a close combat, but that kind of makes sense on Taurus's end, right? Might as well just go for the super effective attack rather than trying to take wave crash and maybe avoiding lowering your defensive stats at the expense of some recoil.
Yeah, at least looking at the board state from Cayden's perspective, there are no spread moves available to Tyler at this point in time. So again, you know that you're going to be able to redirect the first attack, which will most likely be from the Lilligant, but I don't know. The other Clefable could still do good damage with a Moonblast.
Yeah, and it'll be a little more difficult now for Cayden to keep chaining knockouts, where at least there's a Focus Sash on one Pokemon and the bulky Clefable on the other side of the field.
Rillaboom takes the field for Cayden, revealing his final Pokemon, and that Tauros will opt to protect this turn to see just what Tyler locked into. Leaf Blade will not connect with the Tauros thanks to the Protect, and the Clefable on Tyler's side of the field goes straight for a Moonblast into the Rillaboom.
Yeah, might as well get a little damage down there. Not going to be too impactful after the healing from grassy terrain, but it gets a little bit down. And more importantly for Cayden, get Rillaboom out in the field now, can try to threaten a fake out perhaps into that Lilligant slot in order to try to break the Focus Sash. Pretty clear the response to that one, likely to be, no, I guess it can't be a Protect. There is no Protect in that Lilligant, so wonderful, right? Have the opportunity to try to two-tap it. Clefable perhaps won't allow it to happen. You could try to follow me away, but likely going to allow Cayden to score a knockout here. And yeah, we see Lilligant fleeing battle, allowing Talonflame perhaps to take that fake out for it.
Yeah, the Lilligant is Tyler's win condition at this point in time. Assuming that the Pokemon on the opposing side of the field maybe stay the types that they are. But it looks like Tauros will terrestrialize.
Yeah, I mean, it could be interesting, though, right? Where you can see a path where maybe that works out. The fake out doesn't really matter if it hits the Talonflame. I think the hope was, you can use Clefable then to attack the Tauros, but as you mentioned, no longer super effective, so Tauros will probably survive this attack.
Fake out into the Talonflame with a follow-up on a close combat. Even though that's not super effective, it will be enough to pick up that KO. Will also drop the special defense of that Paldean Tauros one more stage down. Therefore, the Moonblast, not super effective anymore, but certainly does a decent chunk of damage. It looks like it would be a 3-hit KO, assuming grassy terrain recovery in between turns.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting information for both players going into that game, where it's just enough damage. Well, is that a damage roll? If it was super effective and I get a better roll, could that be a knockout in game 2? But for game 1, Cayden probably liking the position that he's in now. Lost that Golden Go kind of for nothing, but I think was able to get enough done where Tauros is still a little bit scary, likely to get to swing at least one more time, and there still is that Clefable in the back to potentially help protect it.
Yeah, I think Cayden made a great call during the team preview phase, bringing Tauros to activate the Mirror Herb, and it's just really paid off for him. And even though Clefable on Tyler's side of the field will take this opportunity to redirect an Aqua Jet, looking like Cayden was trying to break that Focus Sash before maybe the Rillaboom could do some significant damage to that Lilligant. There still is a ton of damage potential for both of the Pokemon on Cayden's side of the field. Rillaboom takes a close combat of its own quite nicely, but will follow up with a Wood Hammer into the opposing Clefable, and it's able to hold on.
Yeah, sort of interesting play there, where neither side probably getting exactly what they were expecting, but I think you're pretty happy with that trade if you're Cayden, right? Still need to figure out a way to break this Focus Sash on Lilligant, but with it only being the one remaining Pokemon and only having single target attacks, once you get rid of this Clefable, you probably only need to swing a couple of times in order to pick it up. However, it's starting to get a little dicey. Aqua Jet kind of right at that point where it probably isn't a knockout on Clefable. Of course, doesn't have to worry about the boost from that Mirror Herb because it has the Unaware ability, and currently is still the Pokemon that has that Unaware ability. So it leads to an interesting spot now, right? Do you think you can pick up a knockout with a Lilligant? Allowing you to maybe try to get a cheeky Life Dew out? Do you play something safer with Follow Me? Do you expect Clefable to be targeted down in order to get that isolated one remaining Pokemon and just go for the Protect? Lots of things could happen here.
One other thing I want to call out is that the Rillaboom on Cayden's side of the field is holding Assault Vest, so it's one of the Rillaboom that you'd expect to see from the previous format. It's a little bit more bulky at the cost of its ability to do damage, and I think that definitely came into play with the damage from the Wood Hammer in the previous turn. Cayden will switch out the Rillaboom, looking to save a fake out for later on in this battle, and the Tauros as well, going for a Protect, so waiting to attack when it has the protection of Follow Me alongside of it. We see a matching Protect on the opposing Clefable, and close combat falls short of picking up the KO on the opposing Clefable thanks to its typing and that natural bulk.
That's huge for Cayden. I think very close to locking the game in now. Clefable surviving there is really big. Now you have the option of just Follow Me and attack away, allowing Tauros to try to attack the Clefable slot. As long as there's a double Protect there, you get that at least a 2v1, and then because there's no protected Lilligant, you can fake it out with Rillaboom and have both Pokemon double target the Lilligant the following turn. Perhaps on Tyler's side, you get something like very surprising, or maybe just go for the double protect, trying to get a little bit extra there because he seems like he's just like a turn too slow right now.
Yeah, I think the fact as well that you force the Lilligant on the opposing side of the field to rely on close combat, dropping its special defense, does make it a little bit easier for it to take damage from even a resisted attack from the Tauros. Leaf Blade, though, will pick up the KO on the opposing Clefable, so that's one Pokemon down for Tyler, evening up the Pokemon count. The Tauros will be the next Pokemon to attack and will finally go for a Terra-boosted Wave Crash into the opposing Clefable, and that will also be enough to pick up the KO. So it is now a 2v1 situation with fake out support and no protect on Tyler's side of the field, so we'll probably see this resolve in a turn.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, it's hard to imagine how the poor Lilligant's going to get through this one. Really only gets to set his terrain back up, which probably isn't going to matter too much here, but always feels good. And yeah, the combination of a fake out and now a mostly a close combat into this Lilligant that's already lowered its defenses with its own close combat, having to deal with also the boost from the Mirror Herb and the Tauros. This Lilligant could be knocked out several times.
Yeah, and it is interesting to me that Tyler...
Oh, no. That was a huge fake out.
I kind of want to see how much damage Fake Out can do now, and if it's possible for it to get a one-hit knockout on a Lilligant after, what, maybe 4 or 5 defense drops. But anyways, that's for me in my own time later to figure out. For now, Cayden Owens will win game number 1 in the set, and I want to talk about adjustments for Tyler because it's very interesting that he opted to bring the Hisuian Lilligant without the Torkoal, which is the Pokemon that 9 times out of 10 you see side by side, just given their natural synergy, given the fact that it would weaken those water type attacks from the Tauros. It seems like a really good adjustment for him in game 2.
I think it's really cool insight to kind of how he probably got to this point in this tournament too, where like one of the reasons why I'm kind of a little shy about the whole Torkoal Lilligant thing is like needing a 2 Pokemon combination is a little restrictive. Perhaps Timley is willing to just bring the Lilligant on its own, and I think if you don't have the problem to me was really allowing Tauros to take advantage of King Gambit like that. I think it's an absolutely perfect Mirror Herb execution, and there's stuff he could have done to get back in the game there, but he was so far in the back foot from that point in the game. I think to me that's the key thing to change. Maybe you don't bring the King Gambit at all. If you do, maybe try to be a little bit more careful about when it comes in. I think one of the problems is going to be one of the slowest Pokemon in this matchup. So if you have it out in the field, even if you try to switch it out, it will likely switch after whatever Pokemon switches for Tauros, and then it's too late. All that happens instead is you lose your Defiant boost for it. So maybe a little tricky position to play because, yeah, I mean, I feel like Tauros has been very dominant almost every time we sit on stream this weekend, and once more, it's a game away now from sending Cayden into the top cut.
It's interesting, too, that Tauros has really taken off. I think that when we were coming into Regulation A all those months ago, it was really suited to, I don't want to say be the new Incineroar, because let's be real, everybody knows there is no new Incineroar. It's just here to stay. But I think a lot of people were thinking, especially with the Aqua Breed, it can deal fighting type damage, it can deal water type damage. Like, this is the anti-Incineroar, but we haven't really seen it play out until now. So Cayden, I think also great synergy there, being able to intimidate Mirror Herb in that situation as well. But for this game, we're going to start things off with a 2 seeming Clefable on the field, and Volcarona and King Gambit as well.
Oh, I love this look. So, and Tyler says, like, oh, yeah, I'm doing the same thing I was doing last time. You remember this, right? Something seems a little bit different here.
Oh, he's going to go for it, too.
And I think on Cayden's side of the field, it's interesting, too. He did do a switch up here, perhaps expecting something different on Tyler's side, which it looks like he did not do. Interesting, too, there's a kind of a neat bait on the field as well, where because the King Gambit's out there, it's really tempting to switch into Tauros, and that might not go so well if it happens.
All right, well, watch Cayden's face closely here, because if he's paying attention to the open team sheet, he knows that Clefable is Terra Electric on Tyler's side of the field, and we know that that's Terra Stellar. And fun fact, actually, now the cat's out of the bag. The Incineroar is out of the bag, except it's not Incineroar. It's a Hisuian Zoroark going straight for a Hyper Voice into the Clefable and the Volcarona. Look at Cayden's reaction to that. Oh, that is why you run a Pokemon like Hisuian Zoroark. We will see the Clefable activated Citrus Berry to get some of its health back, but Volcarona now, I think this is why he made the adjustment that he did, getting these Quiver Dances in while the Kingambit's forced to play a little bit slower, maybe forced to recognize the Iron Head into the opposing Clefable as being the correct call. Volcarona ends up on top with that, with a special attack, special defense, and speed boost. But there's also a Hisuian Zoroark on the field now, which changes the game entirely.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, right? Where that's a heck of a turn. Critical hit doesn't matter. They're based on the damage we saw in the first turn. And now we see the drawback of it, right? You get a free switcher Tauros. Speed doesn't matter at all now. We'll get the Intimidate boost, but sort of a precarious position where, can a Kingambit at +1 attack pick up a knockout on this Volcarona with Sucker Punch? If so, things look really bad, right? You really do not want to take or let Zoroark blast away potentially at this Tauros.
Yeah, and not only that, if you decide to try for the Sucker Punch into the Volcarona, you always run the risk of getting burned thanks to its Flame Body ability. Volcarona, I feel like, is a very natural response in the metagame right now to Pokemon like Kingambit, being able to, if you expect a Sucker Punch, you can get those stat boosts in, force the attack to fail, or you could even just say, yeah, you can attack me, but you might get burned. So I think overall, even though it's great that the Tauros is still in a very commanding position here, I do think the Kingambit is going to suffer a bit as a result.
Yeah, I mean, the one positive trade-off is, as we see, Tyler considering his move, you do have that Clefable in the back. Both these Pokemon's increased stats, not going to do anything to Clefable and his Follow Me. Volcarona does at least have the spread option with Heat Wave to do some damage, which the Kingambit certainly isn't going to enjoy, but perhaps Zora could survive a single Heat Wave. I mean, Clefable could survive. Wait, there's two Clefable.
I know. This is also the other fun thing about running Hisuian Zoroark, and I say this as someone who's been in this position but with two Clefairy on the field before, and then my opponent had a Clefairy as well. There's just 3 Clefairy. No Clefable will take damage from the Tauros, and that was actually the Zoroark not taking damage. The Clefable proper will be avoiding the Heat Wave, so my statement of no Clefable taking damage somehow held up.
Yeah, both Clefable looking pretty good here, and I think that's a huge deal, right? I mean, it wouldn't have been a knockout on the Clefable anyway, again, ignoring the Quiver Dance, but you see on Cayden's side, kind of understanding that one Heat Wave probably is going to pick up the knockout onto the Zoroark, trying to get the extra damage with the Aqua Jet, no longer going to be an option. I think there's really no way you can not go for the Follow Me on the Clefable here, the real Clefable, of course. Way too dangerous, but Zoroark should get the swing again, and we saw how powerful it was in that previous turn.
Terastallization on Cayden's side of the field. That Tauros will once again be turning into the water type so that it doesn't have to worry about any super effective damage from the opposing Clefable, the actual Clefable's Moonblast. Volcarona now going for another Heat Wave, and it will connect with the Zoroark, finally revealing itself, the illusion wearing off, and will be knocked out for its trouble. So now Tyler was looking at that Pokemon to pick up the KO on the opposing Volcarona. It's no longer really an option here. Wave Crash from the Tauros will follow up now, will get the boost from the Terastallization, does not have the boost from the attack because of the Unaware ability. Finally aware of how that works. Thank you, Scott, for calling it out until I internalized it. But Moonblast still puts it within KO range from another attack. So that's really important information, I think, for Tyler, is that even though this Clefable will have to dodge another Heat Wave and probably a Wave Crash for its trouble, these Pokemon are running out of health on Cayden's side of the field.
Yeah, so to me the really important thing about last turn is it turns out actually no, Zoroark can just be knocked out by the Heat Wave after a single Quiver Dance, doesn't need any Aqua Jet help, and because of that I think that was a much worse trade than it seemed like it was going to be. It's still not the end of the world. The positive thing for Tyler here is this Gale Wings is still intact, threatening a knockout almost certainly on either of these Pokemon, but yeah, I think you're hoping for a little bit more in that previous turn if you're Tyler. You spent your Terastallization, you had to switch Kingambit out, you kind of gave up a free buff to the Tauros with Mirror Herb in order to get those attacks off the Zoroark, and I don't know if a single Hyper Voice is going to be or have been enough.
It does make me wonder, though, which Pokemon you prioritize knocking out if you're in Tyler's shoes. Your last Pokemon is going to be Kingambit, and it's going to struggle against both of these two. Talonflame's probably not going to keep Gale Wings after this turn either.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to remove its own probably, right? Where I think you probably have to take out Volcarona and just hope that perhaps you're naturally quicker than the Tauros. Looks like that's the path he's going to go.
Talonflame also has upper hand though, so if you can force your opponent into picking that priority Aqua Jet as its attack next turn, that could be an option to outspeed, even when you lose your own Gale Wings thanks to Brave Bird. And that's what we see from Tauros. Aqua Jet into the Clefable will be enough to knock it out. And just like that, both trainers down to their final 2 Pokemon. We know Tyler has the King Gambit, but the big question is, who is Cayden's final Pokemon? It is the Golden Go, like we saw in Game 1.
Ooh, that's great if you're Tyler. So, hey, you know, maybe Zoroark was enough after all. King Gambit really going to enjoy battling both these Pokemon, and even Talonflame is a pretty positive type matchup. Now, yeah, I mean, do you go for the upper hand where you got to feel like if you're Tauros, you know, both these Pokemon can move first and knock you out, so you kind of have to use Aqua Jet, but then, oops, you know, maybe kind of a mistake, and then I think no matter what happens, the important thing is just Talonflame needs to deal with this Tauros so that, you know, the isolated 1v1 between King Gambit and Golden Go is definitely going to go King Gambit's way.
Even if the Golden Go were to try to trick away the choice specs as well, like, it's still going to have to rely on attacking move in order to deal damage, and at some point in time, a Sucker Punch would be able to connect for super effective damage. So Cayden's really in a tough spot here and has to make the correct call in terms of targeting to ensure that he's able to find the win con.
Yeah, it's like Double Accurate 2 or Cayden, where and a Sucker Punch would also knock Tauros out, but it's not going to be a priority move. Whiffing the whiff the upper hand, whiffs the Sucker Punch.
Yeah, that is going to be close combat then into the King Gambit for a knockout, which means Golden Go must have tricked the choice specs onto the opposing Talonflame. Now, because Trick happened after the Talonflame attacked this turn, Tyler will have the opportunity to pick his attack moving forwards, but Brave Bird's not going to get that KO against Golden Go.
Yeah, none of them work, right?
Yeah.
Where you need Brave Bird to deal with Tauros, well, I mean, you need another Pokemon to deal with the Golden Go, and it looks like Tyler's made that choice, and Cayden's going to lock his spot in the top cut.
Yeah, Cayden Owens going X and 2 overall in the Swiss rounds of competition will be moving on to his first ever top cut with a really fun team of the Golden Go, the Tauros with the Mirror Herb. Some strategies that, well, we've heard a lot of players, you know, talk about and maybe prepare for coming into the competition. We haven't yet seen play out on stream.
I think it's a lot of fun. You know, it's kind of an iconic team of the early format. It makes sense it would make it to the top cut of this first regional championships of this regulation. And you know, shout out to Tyler as well. It was a lot of fun. I'm really glad we got to see that Zoroark on stream. And hey, you know, maybe that game 2 goes a different way. I mean, I think to me the critical thing there is that if you're going to go for the upper hand, I think you need to